Hello, this is Steve Harris. It is September 10th, 2013, and I'm going to demonstrate the latest test module for a full Luminode, complete with daughter board. And so here I have one in my hand. Let's see, the light's a little bright, but with the back removed. And so then I've got a new test module here for you, Henry, to use. It replaces the old one that you had. This one's simpler and smaller. It programs both the PSOC and the Freescale chip, so you really don't need to use the other one anymore. It still does work, but it's not a replacement for this, although this is a replacement for it. And so now I'm going to show how to hook this up to the Luminode and run the full test. So the first thing to do is connect this connector, which probably looks familiar to you, similar to the connector on the old test module. Notice there's only 4 pins though, and it's asymmetric. With the daughter board installed and with the changes that we made with the last revision, there's not enough room for all 5 pins. So what I did is I shaved one off, and this will still fit on those 4 pins. And then, but we need that 5th pin for power. And so now what I'm going to do is grab this little guy, this little grabber unit, and then I'm going to grab onto that 5th pin through this little spot right here. So you can kind of reach in and grab it. And so you can see it's connected right in there to that pin. Then we also have a few other connections to make. We have this guy, this pin, this solo pin, which goes into that hole right there. So it's the second one in on the bottom row closest to the main Freescale chip. So I'll just insert that there, give you a good close-up on it. And then the last connection is with this homemade connector that I made, which is basically made out of a clothespin and a 4-pin header. And what that does is it connects into these holes right here, which is an unmounted serial port header. And so now, if I just very carefully insert those pins into there and let the clip hold it in place, I've got a good connection there. So then now, I take my test unit, which I have plugged in for power, although it can take batteries. I suspect that you might run into trouble because as the batteries run down, you'll probably get some malfunctions. With it plugged in, we get some nice good power. So I'm going to turn it on. And what's going to happen is I'm going to press either one of these buttons. They do the same thing. And this first light will blink, indicating that it's uploading a firmware image into RAM on the Freescale chip. Once it uploads it into RAM, this light, one of these will start blinking, indicating that it's writing out the test Luminode firmware to flash. And while it's doing that, this second light will blink, indicating that it's loading a bootloader onto the PSOC. Right now, the LED on the front, if you can see it, let's see here, is illuminated red. It doesn't really matter what it's illuminated to right now. It will matter once it's done. While the daughter board is programming the PSOC, these lights will blink back and forth, and this light will blink back and forth between blue and green. And so here I'm going to move this light so we can see the LEDs a little better. And so here I've got the unit. I'm going to press this button. You can see it's flashing, indicating it's uploading firmware. Then over here, we get that blinking, indicating it's downloading the firmware into Flash. This light has already done its full program of the PSOC for the bootloader. now it's restarting, and you can see these two lights are alternating, and on the flip side, see that's going between blue and green, indicating that the bootloader, that the Freescale chip is programming the PSOC. Now we'll just have to wait until this is done. Let's see if we can still... And when it's done, I'll restart, and that indicates success. Sometimes it'll go through and reprogram it a couple of times in case there's an error. That's not a big deal as long as it eventually winds up in this state in which these two are blinking in unison and this is turned on blue. Sometimes this is turned on red, but that's fine. So either red or blue is fine. That just depends on the state of the air gap switch, and either one is fine. So now it is programmed, and we can turn off this module, and both lights are on here indicating success. So I turn that off, and I can, oops, got a white light. I'm going to remove this, this, and the little grabber. Okay, and so then now what I'm going to do is put the back on here. So I've got my ferrite bead, which needs to go on the black lead. And then I've got, whoops, I've got the back panel, which I feed the wires through. Oops. Okay, and then screw in the screw to hold it in place. Okay, and I'm just going to put it here in my vise to hold it steady. And then now I've got I'm going to hook it up to power and a light bulb. I'm using my isolation transformer in case there's any issues. So for safety, it's going into power strip, which is currently off, which then runs over here to both the light, and I have quick connectors here to connect it to the Luminode, and I will send this along with the test module, so you have that. It's important to use an incandescent bulb because the test firmware assumes an incandescent bulb. It won't work right with a compact fluorescent or LED bulb. It will work right for those with a firmware update, which comes after this, because the test firmware is exactly for test. It'll be adequate for testing basic functionality, but it's not adequate for long-term installation. And in fact will disable itself after a week of continuous use, just for security. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the green quick connect to the green grounding cable. I'm going to connect the black one to the black, the red to the red, and if I hadn't run out of white connectors, I'd have one here, but so this yellow one goes to this white connector. I just make sure that none of those ends are touching each other, and I apply power. And you can see that it has come on, and in fact, now what's happened is, you can see that it's come on red. That just means that the air gap switch happened to start up in the toggled state. So if we press that, it'll re-engage. So so whether that was blue or red doesn't really matter. The sequence of events to initiate a test is you toggle this, so it turns on red, and then you toggle it so then it turns off again, and then you press this, which illuminates it blue, and then you press this, which illuminates it green, gives you a little welcome sign, then it turns on the light full, then turns off quickly through the air gap switch, and at the same time the light turns blue. Then the air gap switch re-engages and turns red, and then when it's all done, it turns green to indicate that the test finished. I'm going to run it one more time with this light bulb out of the way so we can see the LEDs better. And so to repeat the test, you press the little button for the air gap switch, it turns red. Press it again, it turns off. Press that button, flashes blue. Press this, it flashes green. Then goes through the welcome pattern, turns green, light comes on full, turns blue. At the same time the light turns off. Then it turns red, and you can hear the click of the air gap switch turning back on. And when it turns green, it's done again. If it does anything else besides that, then we likely have a problem. And it's also important to note that here, I'm going to repeat it one more time. When the light bulb comes on, when the LED is green, and then it turns blue and turns off, it needs to be a clean cut. If it dims back down instead of being off, then we have a problem. Alright, and just one more time so you can get the idea. Whoops. There we go. And it's alright too if you have to push that a few times. It's just, the main thing is that it turns on red and then turns off. Then you hit this to get it to light blue, that green, goes through its pattern. Okay, and then once it's here and you're satisfied with it, just press either of these buttons on the rocker. It restarts into its normal mode. Again, it needs this toggled. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes it just starts up right. That is an issue that we are not going to fix. We know it's an issue, but it's just the way it is. But anyway, so now it works like a regular switch. Basic behavior. Press and hold for dim. Tap to turn off, tap on, toggle between full loads, and then this is the air gap switch. So if you do that, then when you try and operate it, it flashes red to indicate no good. But anyway, this unit's done. It passed. Turn it off and call it good. Alright, please let me know if you have any questions. I tried to make it as simple as possible. The programmer is pretty foolproof, I think. Good luck. Thanks.